Welcome to the Learning House once again. I am chatting today with Kathryn Gomes of Exploring Creation with Mathematics. You're writing with Apologia. Kathryn, tell me, what brought you to this point in your homeschooling life? You're a homeschooling mom and a homeschooling grad. Tell me how you got here.
Yeah, sure. I get that question a lot. Like, how did you end up writing math books? How does that happen to someone?
Who does that on purpose?
Yeah, just woke up one day and like, I'm going to write a math book. So I was homeschooled K through 12, and that was a good experience on a lot of levels. But one of the areas that was a weakness was math. And so sort of where this all started was when I went to college, I wasn't prepared to major in mathematics. And this is something that my mom and I laugh about. We think it's kind of funny and ironic. Just that we didn't really do things well. And some of the programs I used weren't the strongest. So then I went and studied mathematics. I became a traditional school teacher. I taught in the public schools for 7 years and learned a lot, especially because I mainly worked with students who struggle. Got my master's in education and then switched back into sort of the homeschooling sphere when I had my kids. And I realized that math was such a challenge for so many parents. A lot of homeschooled kids didn't like math. And I became sort of committed to like, okay, I really want to help homeschoolers with this. I really want to help parents feel confident in teaching this, but I also want homeschool kids to love math and also to learn it well so that they are prepared for whatever career or path they choose. So kind of in that, I found out Apologia was looking to offer math. I loved Apologia science. And so I submitted a proposal and then I started writing their elementary math series. So that's sort of how I got here.
How does a girl that didn't really do well in math get to college studying math? Like, what was that? How did you transition there?
And I need to take some responsibility for this because it sounds, I'm putting the blame on my parents. So I was a humanities kid. I was saying I wanted to major in history. I wanted to study French. I wanted to go overseas, all these things, nothing about math. And so we were kind of, checking the box for math, but we weren't like, what's the best program that we can find? And then my senior year of high school, I wrote an essay about mathematics and got kind of interested in it and decided to try it as a major. So very, very late bloomer.
You wrote an essay about math.
Yeah. The minute I had like the slightest inkling, my dad was like, do it. You should do it. You should do it. You should do it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that
man
happened.
In the house?
Say what?
Is your dad the math man in the house?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My mom, she thought we all were going to be English majors. So that didn't happen. And thankfully I had a good professor, but I love math, but what I'm more fascinated by is how to teach it. And so even as I was learning it, I was realizing, there's a right way to teach math and there's a wrong way. It's not just this like math people and non-math people. I don't think I really believe in that. Like it makes a huge difference how concepts are presented, whether you were able to visualize it, how it was broken down, how much time you had to process things. And so I was probably like my first experiment with the wrong way and the right way to learn math. And then when I started teaching in the public schools, I got to see that even more. Like, wow, like if we present things concretely to kids, if they're able to move things around, if they're able to see it on a graph, it can click. And all that translated into home education, right? It's applied so differently, but a lot of the principles are the same.
Okay. So when you're talking about concretely, and can you unpack that idea of the right way and the wrong way without to give I bet you could tell me for a few hours about the right way and the wrong way. But in general, what are some of the right ways and wrong ways in general to teach math?
Sure. So one of the most widely researched and accepted principles is that when you teach a math concept, especially in elementary, it should be concrete, then pictorial, and then abstract. Parents have probably possibly heard this before with other programs because it's pretty widely accepted. What that means with a specific example is like if you're teaching division, the first thing you do is you give your kid beans and they're splitting it apart. That's concrete. Like they're moving things around. You've got blocks, you've got beans. The pictorial is when you have a picture of the beans and they're circling groups. And then only after you've done that do you do abstract, where you have 42 division sign 7.
Mhm.
If you let kids follow that progression with whatever it is, even if it's algebra, the learning is so much deeper and so much more meaningful. So that's one example. Whereas if you don't follow that progression, if you just hand kids math symbols, this means divide, find the answer, they didn't really build learning. They just started, it's almost like they're writing in code and they don't understand the code. It's sort of,
Yes.
it's a very shallow level
Yes.
of learning.
And I remember, okay, this is me geeking out. I remember in my university days, studied Hebrew and Greek. I studied math pedagogy. I studied the history and philosophy of maths and sciences because I was kind of like diving off of. I'd had like a lot of calculus in my brain at that point. I thought I need something a little more artsy
Yeah.
in my math degree, and just the idea that like division signs really are just little pictorials of a fraction being made. But our kids don't know that. It's meant to be number, line, number. And that's what a division sign kind of came out of. But our kids can't just visualize that, and just giving them something that helps them to understand with their hands on to do before they have to do that abstract is so important.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting that you studied other languages as well, because foreign language or a different language is a great analogy as well. If you just like play a video in French for someone who doesn't know French, they're just drowning. They don't have anything to base it on. It's the same when we just give kids the math symbol, but if you create the context, and so they're at a market in Montreal or something and people are speaking French, it's much more meaningful and lasting. It's this,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the same thing when they have the beans or when they're measuring with a measuring cup, they're seeing, oh, 1/2, that equals a whole. They're actually seeing it, feeling it, touching it. So it's a much deeper level of understanding.
So how does that play out in the day-to-day of using this curriculum? What does it like? What are you doing with our kids to get them hands-on?
Sure. Can we maybe I'll
Yeah,
have you show
do you want me to
something?
show some of the books?
Yeah, so let's do level 3 because my daughter's in this level, so it's very fresh.
Okay, all
Let me
right.
find a good, just because it's easier, right? To have
Yeah, you tell
something.
me where to turn to. And I have, while you're flipping about, I have several of the books here. You've got for each level a teaching guide and a student book. This teaching guide is the part that we would use for subsequent students again. Like you, as a mom, we can use that again. And then if we have another student, you're going to get one of these books. So we're looking at the level 3.
Yeah, if you go to page 80 in the level 3 student book, page 80.
Page 8?
80.
Oops,
80.
I'm not hearing you.
That's okay.
Sorry, tell me again.
Page 80. I think you're on the right page, the correct page with the equal
There we
group.
go. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So just to give some context for this as a day in the life, this is in the chapter where students are learning the concept of multiplication for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this lesson, they're going to learn about skip counting. But the first thing they're going to do is an activity. Almost every lesson starts with an activity. And this is where the concrete part comes in. So in this one, they have cupcake liners and candies or another counter. It can be beans. It doesn't have to be candies.
Mm-hmm.
And they are going to make the groups. So the first thing they're going to do is 5 groups of 3. So they're going to have 5 cupcake liners and they're going to put 3 in each. And then they're going to count up the total.
Mm-hmm.
6 groups of 2, 3 groups of 6. So you're spending a good amount of time with your child actually putting objects into different groups and finding the total.
Mm-hmm.
That's the concrete part. And then if you flip to page 81, you can see here's a pictorial representation. So see the ladybugs on the leaves, that's representing with a picture what they just did.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also are going to do some stuff abstractly where they're skip counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it's kind of building in layers, and gradually they'll move to just like 2 times 6 with the times symbol. So that's kind of an example of how they work through this. If you show page 82, that's the last page of that lesson. if people just want to kind of see how long one lesson is. And so in that one, they're going to practice by finding the totals, and it's a picture. It's still not abstract because they're not quite ready for that yet.
So is one lesson one day, or is that a few days? How long is a lesson?
A lesson is one day. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the beginning of the teaching guide, if you go to page
I'm going to pull
6 or
Oops. I'm gonna
this
pull,
book.
yeah, let me pull that one off. I have it here all wrapped up all pretty. I'm going to bring it out.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
While you're doing that, I'll just say
Unboxing.
this book has all the answers and notes on every lesson. And in the front, it has the schedule, like the pacing guide.
I love this. I think every mom loves
there it is.
Things.
This was my editor. I don't want to take credit, but I wrote the book. I use this every day.
And your editor helps you to know what to do each day.
Tells you exactly what to do each day to pace you through the year with like extra days allotted for projects, the end of a chapter. And so it is one lesson each day.
Okay. All right. So it's a 30-week year with 4 days a week at the third grade?
Yeah, third grade. So first and second grade is 28 weeks. Third grade is 30. And then I think by level 6, it's 36 weeks, just because there's more content. So I didn't want to put way too much content on a day. So I need a little fuller year to get you through it. Yeah.
Okay. And do you always have a 4-day schedule for that?
We did a 4-day schedule to account for co-op day or life. So you don't have to do a 4-day. You can keep going. You know what? Every time I'm like, thank God it's a 4-day schedule. Now, some people who don't, our family has a 1-day-a-week co-op. So we just do math 4 days, and then that day we're at co-op all day. But families that don't have a co-op have said they've done it as a review day. So every day there's a lesson, and then there's some short review, and that's on the schedule we just showed.
Okay.
So some families will take Friday and just review that. So if you look, I think
this a chapter review, or
so I think some of the skills there are like adding 3-digit numbers, subtracting 2-digit numbers. So part of the program is that you take like 5 minutes and have your child do a few of those review problems. Sometimes it'll be a game that you play. Sometimes it's just one quick note card fact. And some families take that 5th day to just review that skill is how they make it work.
Okay.
So today, my son's in level 6. He had 2 long division problems on a Post-it that he did. It took him maybe 7 minutes because long division's a little bit of a bear. And then he did a lesson and we moved on.
Okay. So are you sitting with your students most of the time that they're doing math, or is there a degree of independence that they can have while doing this? Like, we work with moms who are like, I'm working full time. I need something where they can be fairly independent. This is not the one where they can just play on their own and do that math. But is there a degree of independence that we can give our kids?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because I think this is a really good thing to clarify when you're looking. So I would say it's not fully independent. If you are looking for a program that's fully independent, this isn't it. What a lot of families do is they are sitting near their child. For the younger levels, 1 through 3, I would say you're working with your child. Most children aren't reading or able to read and comprehend at that level. So there's that aspect. In levels 4, 5, and 6, it is more independent, but this really depends on your kid. I've had a lot of people saying, can my 5th grader do their math on their own? I have a lot of 5th graders who get distracted. It's not really like a matter of can they, but will they? So I typically suggest you're nearby and like they do the first practice problem and you're checking it to make sure they're not doing it all together. Personally, I have found that I'm still at level 6 reading the examples and talking it through, because it seems like a better investment to make sure we've learned the lesson before we start the practice. We're not in a place to like, you're fully independent because they could learn it incorrectly. And then you've kind of gone backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the one other thing I should note is there are games, which has been one of the elements that people really love. So sometimes the opening activity is a game.
I gotta show some of these
in
your book.
But as you're flipping to that, they need someone to play the game with them. So this is gonna depend on siblings, etc. Lots of people are they're just playing it with their sibling. But if you don't have a sibling available that could play a math game, you are going to have to play the game that your child can't play against himself, right?
Yeah. So there's all kinds of activity sheets. I remember, and I'm not flipping to the right one, but I remember finding one that looks a lot like, there we are.
There you go.
Like a proper game board or like Snakes and Ladders type of games and stuff too. So I just thought those would be so fun.
They're so fun, and I laugh every time. Like I was playing my son in an adding and subtracting decimals game this morning that was in level 6, and he gets so excited when he beats me. He still hasn't figured out that like I'm just so happy that he just did like 25 decimal problems. Yeah, because he's just like trying to block me, trying to get 5 in a row, or whatever he's trying to do, and I'm sitting there going, ha, 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 ha. Like we just did like 30 minutes of math review. Yeah. And he's not even realizing, right? Because it's just fun. So
yeah, definitely recommend this as something that works well for our families that like to play games and do activities and projects and have that hands-on for their math. Not for the mom who's like, I just need to throw something at them and I cannot be involved in this process. That's not anything that's not easy to do with a first, second, third grader, no matter how you slice it. But there are moms who are working full time and they need some video lessons or something like that. That's not what we're doing here. But I really like that balance between we do have some games and activities and projects, and I'm letting my kids put their pencil to paper. It's not just the games and activities.
Yeah, I just think it's a really important clarification because I don't think it serves anyone if you think it's one thing and then it's not. And, on that note, Apologia has provided lots of samples. I'm sure that they're on your website as well, or you can find samples and print them, right? So you can really see what it's going to be like. I am a mom of 3, homeschooling as well. So I try to really balance it, make it fun, but doable. So anytime I'm asking you to play a game or I'm asking you to get hands-on materials, we spent a lot of time saying, is this worthwhile? Does this provide enough learning that it justifies it? And if it did, we deemed it worthwhile. So I'm not going to have you crazy amount of materials. You need tissue paper and the science experiment here. Because I get it. Like I open the book and I'm like, oh, like history project today. We try to keep it very manageable. But anytime when you are putting in that extra energy, it's because it's going to pay off. So, in 5th and 6th, we're spending a lot of time on factors and multiples and being able to break down numbers. I taught high school like this. They need this. If they spend the time now, you will thank me when they're in 11th grade. So that's why it's there. And that's why we're going to take the time to play a board game with factors because it's important. We're not going to get away from it.
Yeah, for sure. And to that end, just talking about getting our hands on, I wanted to pop this on here. And that is just that list of supplies. Like the kinds of supplies that you're using tend to be the things that we have around the house. We can get at the grocery store. We can get at the dollar store. There's a few things here that moms and dads like to get from us, things like linking cubes and stuff like that. But that might be something you already have around your house too, or that you can substitute with something else.
Yeah, and actually, can you flip to the very last page of that book? I'll show you another stroke of genius that my editor had. So
there you go.
The wonderful Rachel Eunice. So this is a page I tear it out and it has everything for the whole year on one page down to like a paper clip. A few things to note. Anything math specific, like linking cubes, get used in several levels.
Yes.
So, you get more than 1 year out of it. And then a lot of it's household items. And typically I gather what we have and then it's like one trip to the dollar store and I'm good. I definitely recommend gathering it. Otherwise, it's like the night before, we need Play-Doh. That's not
Yeah.
a great situation.
Yeah, I have a student that is doing grade 10 biology this year. We've been gathering, and there's some stuff that just is not around the house for grade 10 biology.
Right.
Not going to stay around my house for grade 10 biology, that kind of stuff. So yeah, gathering it together adds so much sanity to my life. We've been at this homeschooling game this is our 23rd year. And one thing that I could say is having a schedule, like is in here, even as a Charlotte Mason mama, and a lot of families will say, Charlotte Mason's just about skipping through the daisies and going and wandering through the forest and reading good books. But we have a schedule, and I need to know, especially in these high school years, that we're following a schedule. But when they were younger, I needed a schedule to just give bones to what we were doing and know whether we're a little bit off track or whether we really need to, let's hunker down and not go on that extra field trip or whatever. And to have a list of the things that we need, a supplies list, has always been something that as I was planning for a homeschool, I always just started a list of the things that we need for each different thing we were going to study, each notebook that we needed, or novels that we had to pick up. Those are the kinds of things that they bring sanity to moms. So having that supply list.
These are the things that I'm like, it's getting my library holds in on time. And getting the stuff gathered, and then we have like a great week, and then the next week it's like we don't have baking soda for the science experiment, and everything just goes. Actually, it doesn't go because we don't have the baking soda.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and you know what? I mean, as moms, it goes it's in other areas too. Like the same thing happens when I'm not planning well for meals, and everybody, guys, it's cereal for dinner again. I didn't plan ahead, and we pay for it when we don't plan ahead. So
true.
Yeah, it's nice to have older kids now, because they don't cry and say, "Mama didn't feed me, come on," and then I'm making meals late and exhausted. I'm like, kids, go make me some dinner. So
can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a good stage. Anyways, I digress. Tell me, we've talked about a lot of the stuff that's kind of unique about exploring creation with mathematics. Anything else that you want to point out that makes this curriculum different than others? What did you have to address because it wasn't in another curriculum?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the first thing that's unique is the science connection. So this is like a dream come true to have a science publisher reach out to you to write a math curriculum, because Apologia said before I started writing, they wanted some type of science element. And I'm like, well, absolutely. It's a connection that makes sense because it's real. Science and math are connected. And whenever you teach math, you need a context. So a lot of books, traditional books, use the classroom. So talk about the chalkboard and how many rows of desks. And that context is boring, in my opinion, and it also doesn't apply to homeschoolers particularly well.
Yeah.
But for me to have science as a context was great, because it allows the kids to apply the mathematics as they're learning it, but also learn. So let me give you a specific example. The first one I'll do.
I've got these books here too. I can show you. So tell me if you want me to flip through some stuff.
I'll grab one from the 3rd grade book, and then we'll do a 6th grade. So if you go to page 53 in level 3, the science connection for level 3 is flying creatures. And so birds, insects, and bats. Don't forget the bats. Yes. So I needed a word problem where they were going to add. And so this word problem is about a bald eagle, but it's based on facts. Like the numbers are somewhat realistic. And so then we included a picture of a bald eagle and how bald eagles build their nests in a super canopy tree. So we're able to use real information while writing the word problem. It's so much more engaging for the kids, let alone the fact that they're learning.
And is this the time for me to pull
out
the Apologia science book?
So it's not a random flying creatures. Right. Like, how did I come up with that? It came from the Apologia science.
Yeah.
The connection came from.
Well, and then that leads me down the rabbit trail that I've always wanted to ask you. And that is how integrally involved, moms and dads will ask us, oh, if I'm doing the math, do I have to do the science too? If I'm doing the science, do I have to do the math too?
Yeah, so it's a loose connection. So
Right.
if you do them together, it'll be beautiful. And you'll write me messages. This is just, we're just looking at birds and doing math, and it's lovely.
And I have to say, we have always loved. This is something that my kids have been older than the availability of these math books, but we started one of the first curriculums we started with was Apologia, astronomy. Loved it.
It's so well done. And it's on
Yes.
audio. But I'm not going to talk about
Okay.
Apologia on audio because I'll start crying because that's how much it means to me that it's on audio.
Yes.
But so the connections will be wonderful, but you do not have to do it. So if you're like me, I'm in a co-op and the science is picked by the co-op. So it would be very complicated for me to try to line it up. When it lines up, it's amazing. But if it doesn't, it's not a big deal.
And we've always made clear too that the Apologia sciences are meant to be family style usage for grades 1 to 6, sometimes younger, sometimes older, but really focused on that grade 1 to 6 age. Whereas we don't do that with math. You can't just say, hey, the whole team's doing grade 3 math this year, and next year we're all going to do grade 6 math.
People want to. You can't.
You can't. No, we can't.
You can't. I want to show you another example. Okay, so do you want to look at a different level?
Yeah. I got books all piled around.
I know. We're both like, I got so much apology. So this is level 4, and let me tell you a page to go to, and I'll talk about it a little bit. I do sometimes mix up my own books in my head, like which one's in which thing. Okay, so if you go to page 59 in level 4, the connection for level 4 is Sea Creatures, which is another Young Explorers book. Oh man, we had so much fun. So in each level, there's at least one science-related math project. Every unit ends with a project. And so for this one, at the end of unit 1, they do plan a deep sea exploration. So they research ocean depths, and they're using their knowledge of place value to kind of talk about the different elevations.
Is this scheduled? Is this project scheduled into the schedule, or is that sort of an add-on? Do it if you have interest for that 5th day of the week or something?
No, it's scheduled in, and whenever possible, I gave 2 days for projects. And we gave you as much as we could so that it's not overwhelming, but it really solidifies the learning, and the kids really look forward to it. Like they can't wait to get to it. So that will be at the end of every unit. Like if you jump to page 129 in that book, when they come to the end of unit 2, which is about multiplication, they do map measurement. And so they're using scale to find distances and multiplying using that scale factor to find out how far something is on a map. And then after they do that, if you just turn the page, they get to figure out like where they want to go. Where are they on the map? How long would it take them to go somewhere? If they drive 55 miles per hour for 4 hours, are they going to reach it? So it becomes personal, which again leads to long-term memory. And it also, a lot of times the projects are a little bit more challenging, but the kids rise to it because they're like, well, I want to go. Like they try to figure out somewhere cool.
Would this be a fun thing to do with my co-op or, with all the other kids our age kind of thing? Or is it definitely more meant for at-home kind of projects?
Either. I think projects I love, the more the merrier, because everybody works harder, gets more excited, and it justifies the time more. But if you don't have a group to do it with, you can totally do it on your own. I'm teaching level 6 this year at my co-op, and we're doing all the projects in class just because I want the moms to love me. They're like, yay, it got done, right? So if you can do that, it's great. And some families, they're doing the math on their own in the meeting just for like end of unit. I did that this summer. Yeah, this summer I had a Math 5 club, and we got together like 3 or 4 times and just did like the projects and some of the games, but we weren't doing every lesson at the same time.
Okay, let me go down a little rabbit trail that comes up because the moms and dads here in Canada are looking at this saying, inches, miles, we're Canadian. So
Yeah.
how much do you integrate teaching metric measurement into this curriculum, or is that for later, or do I supplement with that?
We do have metric. This is where I'm gonna maybe not know off the top of my head. Wait, I know it's in there. Just like, which book is it in? We do have metric, but it is something to look at level specifically, because I know like in the level 2, we do money and it's US currency. So future project for me, I would love to do a downloadable option of Canadian currency. That would involve me.
We should chat about. Yeah.
Yeah, it would involve me having to come to Canada just to make sure, because then I can get a trip out of this.
See our colorful money. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's people over in other countries as well who've raised that, but it's not. Yeah. That is not done. As
yet. And something that something to address to our Canadian population is our denominations of money are the same as they are in the US, so they look different. But we also come up with like all kinds of different pictures on our quarters and stuff like that. But quarters, nickels, dimes, and so on. We actually don't have pennies here anymore. Did you know we don't have pennies?
We keep saying we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah. So, but we do have we calculate things down to 1 cent. So we do have the same denominations as you would. So the counting of money and learning how to deal with money is the same, although oftentimes families will want to use Canadian coins just to exemplify things. And the need for metric as well as imperial measurement, like we say that we are metric family, but I've always measured my weight and my height in pounds and in inches. And Canadians, we don't teach imperial measurement in school, but we use it a lot.
So that's funny.
And there's quite this funny disparity between the things that we use. There's a lot of things we do in metric and a lot that we do in imperial, but we don't teach imperial in school. So having that balance of a little bit of both actually is usually an advantage for most families. Though if they feel like there's not enough metric measurement, we have things to supplement with that. So
yeah, and as you get into the higher levels, I mean, we have to know metric for science. It's
exactly.
So if we could just get rid of imperial, but so it's going to teach.
Did she say that out loud?
Celsius and Fahrenheit. It's typically I do one lesson on imperial, and the next lesson is the same thing with metric. And inevitably, my son goes, "Well, it's so much easier in metric."
Yes, it is.
I'm like, it is. If we could just all figure this out, but
yes. I'm just looking through to see, we've chatted about a lot of things I had here, but can you talk to me about the struggling learner and how exploring creation with math would meet the needs of a struggling learner, or does it? Is there something I need to do to modify this program to make it work for a student that doesn't learn the way that all the other kids do?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I've had so much interest on that topic. So the first thing I always want to say, just in the spirit of honesty and just being forthright with people, is I don't have a specific background or qualifications for certain learning challenges like dyscalculia, or I haven't researched into that in particular. But what has happened that I'm really overjoyed about is a lot of the research that I based the books on is then also helpful if you have a learning challenge. So for instance, the concrete pictorial abstract, that progression is helpful for all kids. Some kids move through it more quickly, and a student with, some other learning challenge, it might take them longer, but they still go through that progression. And so having that progression helps them. Another thing, I'm trying to think if I could quickly, I don't know if I can quickly find a 2-page spread, but we spent a ton of time on layout. I'm really, really passionate about layout. White space, enough space for kids to write in, a flow to the page.
Enough space to write in is so important.
Yeah. And even like organizing it graphically for kids to fill in. Let me see if I can find, because this would be a lot better if I can show
you tell me if you have a page, but I'm just flipping through. just because moms and dads they can look on our website. Our parents should know, if you've looked on our website at all, that on every item, if the publisher, vendor, author gives us any samples or any other digital resources like placement tests and so on, those are always underneath the picture of the item. So we want you to be able to see as much as you can if you can't come here in store, but just so you can see what's there.
So turn to page 97 of that book, just as
This one on level 4?
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by like the design sort of scaffolding the skill. Mm-hmm. So on page 97, kids are learning to multiply vertically. And a big issue here is kids learning to write the problem clearly so that they multiply the ones and multiply the tens and get everything lined up. So that actually is a major issue. And if you have like issue flipping numbers or things, that it's just so much more challenging. So if you look at this page in part 1, the top of the page, we wrote the problems for the kids and stacked it vertically. Okay. But then in part 2, they are going to rewrite it vertically. We gave it to them horizontally, but we gave them those boxes. Mm-hmm. So the boxes are an example of where we're scaffolding it using the layout, because if that was just totally blank, a lot of kids would actually struggle to write 6 times 31 correctly, lined up correctly. Mm-hmm. And then in the word problem,
and there's something like I have to rearrange that because it says 6 times 31, but I'm going to write 31 times 6.
Yes.
So I have to understand that that's okay to do.
Yes. And then even if you flip back to say page 94, going back a little bit.
Ooh, complicated.
So this here was before multiplying vertically, and it has them break numbers apart. So when they do 5 times 31, they actually write 5 times 30 plus 1. And so they're doing the step, but they're breaking it down. So this kind of thing really helps kids learn it scaffolded. And parents are telling me that these types of breakdowns and the spacing are helping their child who has a specific challenge. So that's what I've heard so far. So that's what I know so far, but I don't have like an official, like this program is officially considered good for, XYZ.
Yeah. And I know, again, I don't have those qualifications to specifically advise families with kids who learn differently, but we do have people on our staff that can help with that. And some of the general recommendations they have are those: get your hands on, do the concrete, whether it's math or other things, do the concrete before we're requiring that abstract or that written response. So
yeah. And one of the best things is I told you to go through the progression, but one of the best things about the progression is if your child ever is having trouble, you just go backwards. So if you taught division at first with beans, but now it's like 3 days later and your child is having trouble on a division problem, you just get the beans back out and kind of go back. In the higher levels, it's fraction tiles and things that model things. So because the program introduced the concept conceptually, you always will have some tool. Like if they are starting to struggle, like, well, when we first did this, we used Monopoly money. Let's grab the Monopoly money and act it out again. And normally 1 or 2 times the kid goes, oh yeah, I remember I have to break apart the 100, it comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. Neat. Would you say that your resources key into any particular style or philosophy of education? Are you a Charlotte Mason mama? Are you a classical style? Does this fit all of the different curriculums in one way or another? Or what style do you think your books best fit into?
Yeah, I think it's Charlotte Mason inspired. I think it's most closely fits Charlotte Mason. I think the thing for me is when I sat down to write it, I wasn't basing it like, okay, well, what's the classical framework? Let me write a classical math curriculum. What's the Charlotte? I was just looking at the research on what works. A lot of what's in Charlotte Mason fits with research. And so I think it's why I kind of landed there in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's kind of, It's hands-on for sure.
Yeah.
Hands-on, but doable. Not
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We certainly don't reserve this just for those, diehard Charlotte Mason families, but the families that need or want the hands-on style of learning, it works really well. Um, One of the things that has just sort of come to mind as I'm thinking about the way that it dovetails with the science curriculum, Apologia is clearly a Christian worldview, has a Christian worldview as the foundational principles in their sciences. How much Christian content is there in the Exploring Creation with Math books? Is this something where I can use the content in my math to further my kids' biblical learning and knowledge, or where a secular family would go, you know what, actually, I think that I'm comfortable with what's in this book as well? Where do you
Yeah.
fall there?
Yeah, so it is Christian. I'm glad you brought that up. It is Christian. The start of every unit has a short devotional or essay about how that content connects to our faith. I think it's always worth me taking the time to tell you a page number.
Yeah, I'll pull it in.
If you go to, do you have the red book?
I could do the red one. I love it that we can switch to colors now. I got the red one.
Page 110.
Okay.
So unit 2 is fractions. And so this first page talks about fractions in music and in the world. The idea here is that math is in creation. And what gets teased out throughout the different books is that whenever we learn about creation, we learn about the creator. And so we can see different aspects of his character. So here I'm just showing the kids how we do find fractions in the world, right? It's not just something in your math book. If you look at, see if there's another.
Okay. Here's the beginning of unit 2. Sorry, I was confused there because it said chapter 4, but the beginning of unit 2.
If you look actually at page 10, the beginning of unit 1, page 10. For this one, before they start the whole book, I kind of walk kids through how God has a plan. God's plan is good, and God's weaving all the details of their life together. So if we're starting this book, yeah, if you just turn, yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Page 12.
Yeah. So we start the whole year with that mindset that God's in all the details of our life, including us doing this math book this year.
Love it.
So that is the Christian
days. Love it.
Yeah. I find it, I mean, it's always kind of like I wrote these, and oftentimes on the day that we get to them, like I need it. Like I need a reminder, like that this is, we're in God's plan and that he's with us and all that. So I find it very encouraging, and it helps my kids see that God is a part of learning mathematics as well. In terms of a secular family, I mean, they would have to look at it. I don't know, but it is in those, it's just those those unit intros is where the Christian content is.
Okay. I love it. I love the way that it dovetails with the science, even though we don't have to have that one-to-one correlation, because science is meant to be for multiple age.
They were so fun. Like, I'm a little obsessed with monarchs right now, and how, they're up in Canada and then they're migrating right now. We're watching them because we're trying to go to this one spot when they come through. The monarchs, I wish they would go by my schedule, but anyways, it's like amazing. It's amazing to me how they have this like super generation that goes all the way down to Mexico. I know, and all these things. And so that's in one of the books. One of the intros is just about how God created these monarchs and this pattern that we can find in nature, and it reflects patterns in mathematics, and it allows the monarchs to survive. So those connections were so cool. And now, we just read a picture book about monarchs, and one of my kids like, that was in my math book. I'm like, I know.
And we have often raised monarchs in our family, and now that we have the store, often we have them here too. But neat. So neat. Very neat. We've chatted for a long time. I really appreciate your time. Any other nuts and bolts a mom needs to know to do this in the day-to-day? About how long are we spending doing math in a day?
Yeah. So I would say levels 1 through 3, probably 30 minutes with,
Okay.
you always give that disclaimer, right? Depends on the day. And then I think levels 4 through 6, 45 minutes, with the disclaimer of how focused is your child, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, we have that, but
Yeah.
typically, so my son's in level 6. So he's spending 5 to 10 minutes on the review skill, long division or factors, and he's doing something with that. And then he's doing the actual lesson. My daughter's in 3rd grade. It's normally 30 minutes. Today, she probably spent 40 because she was doing quite a bit of reviewing with 2-digit subtraction. And then she did word problems. So those are a little more challenging. But that's
and always, again, want to acknowledge that some of our little people, especially like 1st and 2nd graders, they may have 5 or 10 minutes of attention in them. And our really big goal for them is to help them to expand to that attentiveness. And so we do the math, and it's not about like, we're going to hit it until we finish a certain amount, but that we work with them as well as they can attend to it.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I should note, because sometimes when parents look online, the lesson looks short to them. They'll be like, this is it? Is it? And the one thing I like to remind people is a lot of the learning is happening off the page. So if you look at one of the lessons and there's a game, your child might do 20 problems in the game. And so then when you look at the practice, you're like, well, it's only this page, but they did all that work with mathematics. It just isn't the way you're used to seeing it, them filling out a page. And so there is a lot of rich learning, but you have to kind of retrain your brain that it doesn't have to be written on a worksheet to count. There's verbal work, there's the game, they're doing it mentally because most kids aren't sitting there. So there is a lot to it that might not pop out at you right away as like, oh, here's all these worksheets that they're doing.
And just having that digestion time, that time to just think about it and then go, oh, I get it. We've always said one of the greatest parts of our homeschool has been our dinner table discussions. And like you do your lessons, you fill out the sheets, you go on the field trip, you read a book, you do your narration, whatever was the day. But when it comes a few hours later, when dad's home, when we're talking about our day, and it might be unpacking a history lesson, it might be talking about what we learned in math, it might be talking about something in current events or some issues that we're having with our friends, unpacking those things and just discussing it later really shows how much our kids' brains have been working and moving in those off times as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're like, my greatest moments of joy are like my kids saying, oh, so, this number's almost prime because it only has this many. I'm like, you've been thinking about this all day. It's all worth it.
Yeah. That's great. That's so great. I so understand that. Well, Kathryn, it's been such a treat talking to you again. We were reminiscing how we chatted way back when you first started publishing, or when you were first published as an author back in 2020. And these resources have grown. We've got grades 1 through 6 available. The question always is, of course, are you going to give us some more? Do you have kindergarten in you? Is there grade 7 bopping around in there that we're going to provide, or what's next?
Yes, I do get that question a lot. I don't currently have plans for level 7 and beyond or kindergarten, partly because I'm homeschooling 3 kids, but I do have the ideas, right? And it wouldn't be a typical day without someone saying, where's level 7? So feel free to keep asking me and I'll keep telling you and let you all know right away if there are plans for that.
But our kids currently in level 7, we're going to help them to find some other transition until Kathryn has got a little bit less of a busy day in homeschool. Homeschooling 3 kids very actively now. So I appreciate how much you have produced, knowing this is a major undertaking when I've written and published as well. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's
more than you think.
Oh, yes.
It's sort of like having a baby. Like if anyone sat you down and told you all of it before you did it, you'd be like, oh, wow.
No, that's just too much work. So, understand. I've been there. Any last tips that you want to give us before I let you go? And thank you for joining me. What's a a tip from the math mom for helping moms and dads to help their kids to thrive in their math learning?
Yeah, I think that my main mission is to help kids love math. My goal is that it's the subject your child wants to do first thing in the morning, that they're the one grabbing the book off the shelf. And so that's the heart behind this series, with the games, with the color, with the science, is to help your kid fall in love with math, to flip them if they hate math right now. So if that resonates with you, that vision, I would say check it out and see if, math can be the part of your homeschool day that really shines and where your child is just having so much joy.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks for joining me. It's been nice catching up with you again after we chatted years ago, and I think we've crossed paths here and there in between, but it's been refreshing to chat with you today. Thanks for joining me today, Kathryn.
My pleasure.